Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the CFR training webinar for the 2023-24 fiscal year consolidated fiscal report. We have a good sized crowd today with over 500 attendees, so hopefully we don't have any issues with the WebEx. Both of the webinar sessions will be recorded and posted on YouTube. So if you have a colleague that could not make it or you want to listen to training again, you will be able to. We will send an email out to all providers notifying them of when they are available and where they can be found. My name is Alpa Amin, a representative from OPWDD, and I will be the host for the two webinars we have scheduled this week. Today's NY State representative will be as follows. Representing OASS, Paul Green, Paul Sutton, Lisa Vickery. Representing OMH, Michelle Chilinsky, Josh Becker, Sean Griffin. Representing OPWDD, Francis Visilio, Kenneth Glinmeyer, Alpa Amin, Emily Seward. Representing SED, Catherine Cochran, Ian Haas. Representing DOH, Jeffrey Nickerson, Nicole Miliose. Also, we have survey that will pop up at the end of the event. We would greatly appreciate you taking the time to fill out the survey so that we can continue to make this training better each time. Session 1 will cover getting started, CFRS web, core reporting CFR 1 through DMH 1. Questions and answers. This slide is important and hopefully you have had the opportunity to check out previous Q&As that have been posted on the OMH website listed on the screen. We strongly encourage all attendees to ask questions through the Q&A function in the webinar. It is on your right-hand side of your screen, and you might have to click the arrow next to the Q&A to open up the dialog box. If you don't see it, click the three dots at the bottom right of the WebEx and then click Q&A. We will not be answering questions today, but plan on answering all the questions and posting answer online along with a recording of this webinar so that everyone can get the benefit of this webinar and the questions asked. This is always good to know when you have a question. This slide shows how to contact each agency. Most of us are still working a hybrid in-office remote schedule, so all the agencies prefer email contact. New York State Department of Health providers may submit questions regarding their CFR submission by email to DOH email address listed on the slide. Any questions related to claim can go to the contact listed on this slide. As noted on the previous slide, email would be the preferred method. By end of this seminar, we hope to accomplish the following goals. Introduce providers to the CFR manual and CFRS web, provide NYS agency contact information for specific questions not covered during this training session, help providers become familiar with the CFR core reports, discuss important policies, principles, and rules regarding completion of the CFR. I will now pass on the presenting to our first panelist.
Thank you, Alpa. This is Paul Sutton representing the Office of Addiction Services and Supports. We're going to talk about getting started. The CFR manual contains 9 general overview sections, with a section for each of the core, claiming, and supplemental schedules, as well as numerous appendices containing additional detailed information. The manuals are available online at the SED website from the link provided. This is a screenshot of the SED website, where the manuals and appendices are found. You can also find a 30-day extension request if needed, as well as access the transmittal letter with the most recent updates to the manual. The CFR is used as a year-end cost report that documents service provider expenses and revenues on one consolidated report and is shared by the 5 New York State agencies. This cost report information is used for rate and fee setting, cost of living increases, and fiscal analysis. The cost report is also referred to as the core schedules and consists of the CFR 1 through 6 and the DMH 1. A year-end claiming document is also used, and this is the basis of payment of your final claim for the CFR period. And the claiming document are for the schedules DMH 2 and 3. Full accrual accounting must be used when reporting fiscal information on Schedule CFR 1 through 6 and the DMH 1. Your claiming schedules, the DMH 2 and 3, may be completed on an accrual, modified accrual, or cash basis. Those of you that file a mini-abbreviated CFR may complete all required schedules on accrual, modified accrual, or cash basis of accounting. The goal of accrual accounting is to account in the periods in which they occur the effects of transactions and other events and circumstances on an entity to the extent that those financial effects are recognizable and measurable. This means your revenue is recognized and recorded when earned, regardless of when you receive payment, and your expenses are recognized and recorded as they are incurred, not when they are paid. Units of service are counted when provided, and your salary expense, your personal services are reported in the period they are incurred, not the period the paycheck is issued. There are 4 types of CFR submissions: full, abbreviated, Article 28 abbreviated, and mini abbreviated. The type of CFR a service provider must complete depends on the type of programs operated and the amount and type of funding received from the state agencies. You should review the submission matrices in Section 2 of the CFR manual to determine the type of CFR submission that is required. And when a service provider is funded by more than one New York State agency, the most stringent reporting requirements apply for all required CFR filings. This means if you have programs with OASIS and with OPWDD, and OASIS only requires you to submit an abbreviated CFR, but OPWDD would require a full CFR, you must then submit a full CFR. This is a screenshot of the submission matrix from Section 2 of the manual. You would follow this and go through the series of yes and no questions to help you determine which type of CFR submission to prepare. Note that for purposes of determining submission requirements, Medicaid managed care is considered to be Medicaid. And Section 2 of the manual also contains various notes relating to New York State agencies' specific reporting requirements and exceptions. These matrices change often and should be reviewed on a yearly basis. CFR reporting periods are generally based on the geographic location of a service provider's corporate headquarters. This training covers the July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2024 fiscal year reporting period, and all programs operated during this time should be reported on the CFR. If your agency is a contract for one or more programs funded in a different period than your agency's standard CFR reporting period, an additional mini-abbreviated CFR may be required for the non-standard filing period. An example of this, situation would be if a service provider has its corporate headquarters in Manhattan and operates programs in both Manhattan and Westchester County. They must submit their primary CFR on a standard reporting period of July 1st through June 30th. This provider would complete the CFR detailing all expenses and revenues for all programs in operation during that time, including the Westchester County programs. Further, they must also then submit a secondary mini-abbreviated CFR on a January 1st through December 31st reporting period for the programs that are funded by Westchester County only. Additional reporting requirements and explanation of this can be found on page 3.1 and 3.2 of the CFR manual. The due dates are as follows. For the July to June filers, if you operate OMH and SED programs, your due date is November 1st, and a 30-day extension request, if needed, is due on or before that date. For OASIS, OPWDD, and DOH filers, the due date is December 1st, and a 30-day extension does not apply. If you are an OMH or SED provider need a 30-day extension, you can find the appropriate form at the link provided. New York State agencies will not be responsible for any loss of state aid resulting from noncompliance with the required deadlines or late amendments. To ensure compliance in submitting accurate CFRs and the required supporting documents, each New York State agency can impose sanctions and penalties on the provider. The imposition of sanctions or penalties may include withholding of advance payments or suspension or revocation of your operating certificate. We will not go into specifics here, but each agency has their own separate penalties, and each one will discuss those penalties at a later time. If your agency is funded through an LGU contract, check with the county in New York City for their specific requirements regarding CFR and final claim submissions. The LGUs may require a submission due date that is earlier than New York State agency due date. New York State agency requirements are the minimum requirements regarding CFR submissions, and LGU requirements can be stricter but cannot be more lenient. And lastly, sending copies of the CF certification schedules to the county does not fulfill your requirement with the state agencies. The CFRs are prepared and submitted using CFRS Web, which can be found at the following link. In addition to the submission of the CFR, the certification pages, agency financials, and parent agency allocation forms should be submitted through CFRS Web. Additional instructions on how to upload the certification pages through CFRS Web will be discussed later in the presentation. And please do not mail paper copies of the CFR core schedules, the CFR 1 through DMH1, to the New York State Agency CFR units in Albany. Please just save yourself the paper and the cost of postage and just upload them. CFRS Web is a preferred method of submitting certifications. In addition, OASIS, OMH, OPWDD, and SED will continue to accept emailed PDF copies of all required certifications. OMH, OPWDD, and SED will also accept paper copies of the applicable certification schedules. And lastly, DOH will only accept certifications that are electronically uploaded through CFRS Web. Emailed PDF copies should be sent to your agency's local CFR units. And the email address for those was provided at the beginning of the presentation. When a revised CFR is submitted, A provider is required to upload revised certifications complete with a new DCN number as noted below. For OASIS providers, a new CFR II, III, III, and IV are required. Note that subsequent to a new CFR II or II, OASIS will accept an attestation reporting minor changes in lieu of the additional II or II. SED and OPWDD require a new CFR and II. OMH and DOH require only a new CFR. With OPWDD, a new certified CFR and CFR II or II, if they were required with your original CFR submission, is required. Only CPA certified CFRs will be utilized for calculation of OPWDD reimbursement levels or any other initiative that utilizes the CFR for calculation of funding or reimbursement. Providers may submit revised CFRs and/or certification schedules in CFRS Web that have not been certified in compliance with other agencies' requirements. However, OPWDD's CFR unit will not accept them without certification. If you decide to email your certifications in, OASIS and OPWDD suggest the following naming structure for the PDF files. And in this naming structure, the 5-digit numbers at the start is your 5-digit agency code, followed by the reporting period of the certifications you're submitting, and the 8-digit number refers to the DCN number of the certifications that you are submitting. And note that with OMH and SED, if you are emailing certifications in, no specific file name is required. Consolidated financial statements, including all affiliates, must be submitted electronically as PDF files through CFRS Web. In addition, financial statements reflecting information on the provider as a standalone entity should be uploaded if available. Providers that are required to have a single audit based on uniform guidance must upload a copy of the audit report to the funding agency via CFRS Web. More information on these requirements can be found at the below link. Financial statements should only be uploaded once per fiscal reporting period unless there are changes. This means if you have to make revisions and resubmit your CFR, you will have to send new certifications. However, you do not need to send your financial statements again, as we only need one copy. Do not upload draft financial statements. Unless it's your final copy, just please don't send it, as we will not review those. And if you file a mini abbreviated CFR, financial statements are not required. And lastly, OPWDD will not accept paper copies of financial statements at all, so please just upload them. Prior period financial statements can also be uploaded through CFRS Web. It is preferred that CPA audited financials correspond to the CFR reporting period. However, if your agency's corporate fiscal year is different than the CFR reporting period, submit financial statements with an end date that falls within the CFR reporting period. And it is recommended that the audited and certified financials include prior year's data in the presentations of the balance sheet and income statement or comparably labeled schedules. Here's some tips on record keeping. Program payroll and fringe benefits should be recorded to the general ledger on a monthly or quarterly basis. Salary allocations between different programs should be carefully monitored. Expenses and revenues should be monitored on a regular basis and compared against approved budgets. Units of service provided by programs should be tracked on a regular basis. Program descriptions and units of service definitions can be found in appendices E, F, G, H, and HH. And non-allowable costs should be tracked on a regular basis for easy identification when preparing the CFR. A list of some but not all non-allowable costs can be found in Appendix X. A cost must be reasonable and/or necessary for providing services in both its nature and amount. In determining the reasonableness of a given cost, consideration will be given to whether the costs incurred in rendering the service are generally recognized as ordinary and necessary for the operation of the organization and the restraints or requirements imposed by federal and state laws. Providers operating programs should refer to Appendix X of the CFR manual for a list of some but not all non-allowable costs. All non-allowable costs included as an expense on any line of the CFR schedules must be reported on the adjustments or non-allowable cost line of the applicable schedules as well. Some examples of non-allowables that must be adjusted out include the following: costs that are not properly related to patient care and principally afford diversion, amusement, or entertainment to owners, operators, or employees; costs related to the purchase of alcoholic beverages; costs resulting from violations of or failure to comply with federal, state, and local government laws and regulations; and costs of training affording staff that may not directly relate to the fulfillment of their required duties. And please note that expenses which are acceptable for GAAP and IRS may or may not be reimbursable for your state agency. Related party transactions. The allowable cost of a related party transaction is the lower of the related organization's actual cost or the fair market value of providing the goods or services. All related party transactions, as well as entity-wide agency administration, must be disclosed and detailed on the CFR 5 schedule. All excess related party transactions included as an expense on any line of any CFR schedule must be reported in the adjustments line of the applicable CFR schedule as well. Fringe benefits expenses that are not reasonable and available to all employees are non-allowable and must be adjusted out of reported costs on the applicable CFR schedule. Examples of non-allowable fringe benefits include supplemental executive retirement plans or any non-qualified deferred compensation plans, subject to IRC subsection 457. CFRS Web is a common platform for the providers of the 5 New York State agencies that are required to submit CFRs and CBRs. All New York State agencies and their programs are to be reported on one consolidated CFR. CFRS Web requires entry of agency information and program site information. Only program codes and funding source codes that are valid for the current reporting period can be used. CFRS Web must be used for all new CFR submissions and any revisions to prior period CFRs. Previous submissions retroactive to calendar year 2012 are available in CFRS Web to view and edit, and signature pages will continue to be uploaded through CFRS Web. Most questions regarding CFRS Web can be answered by reviewing the New York State CFRS webpage located at this link, or the CFRS Web User Guide located in the CFRS Web menu under Help. After reviewing those, if you have additional questions or require additional assistance, we recommend you first contact the CFR State Agency representative for your programs located below. If additional technical assistance is required, such as the CFRS Web the application is not responding, you can contact the New York State ITS at the help desk at the below number, or at the below email. So please reach out to your local CFRS agency representative first. User access to CFRS Web must be authorized by the service provider's security manager. The security manager at the provider agency assigns a CFRS Web role to fiscal staff involved in reviewing, preparing, or submitting CFRs. The assigned user role can be viewed by clicking on the username at the upper right of the screen. A different set of permissions is associated with each role. If a different level of access is needed, the user should contact the security manager at your agency. The possible user roles are as follows. A reviewer reviews all documents within the application, but they do not have the ability to create and submit new documents. They can only view. A preparer can create and complete new documents and review and revise all documents within the application, but they cannot submit the CFR to. And the submitter can do all three. They can create and complete new documents, review and revise all documents within the application, and submit all supporting documentation. Instructions for a user, such as a CPA or fiscal person, to retain the same user ID for multiple providers. If you have creating a user for a CPA fiscal for an outside CPA, you should ask the user if they have an existing user ID with a different agency. If they have an existing user ID, then you should send an email request to your state agency's CFR unit requesting that they add your CPA to your agency by providing the following information: their name, the user ID they have with their primary agency, your agency code, and what role you wish to assign to them. Once the above noted information is provided to your state agency's CFR unit, the request will be processed and the results will be relayed back to you. And this concludes my section of the presentation. I will now pass on to the next presenter.
Hello, my name is Francis Vasilio. I work in the CFR unit for OPWDD. The first slide we're looking at is the announcement board, which appears at the top of CFRS Web when you log into it. You'll get updates here of information that you may need. For instance, when the 2023-24 fiscal CFR modifications have been made to the program, there'll be a posting here that you can look for before, so that you know it's okay to start your CFR. Beneath that announcement board, you'll see 4 quadrants. The page is split 4 ways. You see some of the buttons are grayed out and some are yellow. That depends on your user role. If you've just got, say, a reviewer role, then certain of the buttons will be grayed out for you. If you've got a submitter role, you can do everything and all the buttons will be yellow. We'll start with creating a new submission. This is what you do when you're first starting your first submission for a reporting period. That's really just about the only time most of you will ever need to create a new submission. And once you press that button, you'll be asked some questions. You have to identify what type of CFR it is, full, abbreviated, many abbreviated. You have to click the box next to each of the participating New York State agencies as to what will be included in the CFR. You have to identify whether it's a calendar or fiscal CFR, which reporting period. And you see this important question here, would you like to carry forward data from a prior submission? This is what almost all of you will and should do, is bring forward a CFR that's already mostly, you've already filled out the previous year's CFR. You're going to use that as the basis for your new CFR. If, however, you choose to create from scratch a CFR, a new submission, you're going to be taken to the page where you have to fill out the information about your provider agency. This is the agency definition screen. And then after you fill that out, you'll go on to the program site definition screen, and you have to fill out all the information about each of the programs that you're offering. Again, most of you will not need to do this because you're going to carry forward from your last submission. So once you've chosen to do that, and you chose yes to carry forward, you're going to see this screen come up. Well, this is the screen you would choose to carry forward. And you will see you'll have options here. The last CFR for each reporting period will pop up so that you can decide if you want to bring forward last year's CFR, which is what you almost always be doing. You do have the option of going back to bring forward a previous CFR, but that's rarely a requirement for you. So you check the box next to the one that you want, and then you get this screen. And the important issue here is, do you want to bring forward all data or just master data? So all data, basically everything that was in last year's, say, June 23 CFR will come forward into your June 24 CFR, including the dollars reported for expenses and the hours worked and the revenue received. Some of you that do a mini abbreviated CFR for just a contract or something may do that and then go in and update anything that's necessary. Most of you will choose to bring forward master data only. Now, this will bring forward things like what programs were included last year, because in most cases, most of the programs don't change. Your agency data doesn't change. Your standard work week for your positions in the programs normally don't change. So this is what most of you will choose to do. If, when you chose originally which state agencies to be included in the CFR, and then you chose to bring forward previous submission, if you didn't click the same state agencies as were present on the previous submission, you'll get a screen like this, a warning here, hey, there's a problem. There are different state agencies listed on that last submission from what you said you wanted on this one. If that was an error on your part, you can hit the back button and go back and fix that. If you intended to leave out one of the state CFR agencies, then you would go ahead with the next button. And once you've completed the carry forward, you've created a new CFR for the new reporting period. you'll get a message like this pop up on your screen. One thing that doesn't come forward each year, even if you carry forward or master data, is the beginning and end dates of your financial statements. So you'll always need to go in once you've created a new CFR and enter this information here. The reason that this is important is because the program will see if the beginning and end dates of your financial statements are going to match the beginning and end dates of your CFR, and if so, or if not, they'll know whether you need a CFR II or a CFR II-A. The program figures that out on its own. In order to do that, let me look back here. See this little calendar, the yellow button with the, I think it looks like a lunchbox, but that's supposed to be a calendar. You click on that, and then you're going to choose the month and the day of your beginning date of your financial statement, and then you're going to do the same thing for the end date of your financial statement. Let's say you've brought forward all the programs from last year. If you want to edit what it says, you see you've got a site name in there. If you want to change what your site name is for one of your programs, that's something that is up to you, whatever you want to call your site. You can choose the little pencil off to the right and make any editing change there. If you're no longer offering that program and you want to remove that from the new CFR you've just created, you would hit the little garbage can off to the right. One thing you can't do with the edit is to change a program number. So if a program had one name the previous year and the state agency changed that name, you may need to delete the program as it was reported the previous year and then go in and enter a new one. You do that by using that Add Program button on the upper right. That's also if you're just, you've picked up a new program that you're funded through the state, you hit the Add Program button. And you get this screen. And the first step is to check at the middle top there which state agency is funding this program. Then you're going to enter your program number. You see a drop down there. If you check OASIS and then you hit the drop down, all the OASIS programs will be listed and you can choose which one you're adding to your CFR. You're going to have an index code. If you check the appendices for the programs, it'll give you an indication of what to use for an index code and a site code. And then again, the site name is whatever you call it yourself. The address of where you're operating this program, which may not be the same as your headquarters. You fill all that out. And then you see here it's all filled out, and then you hit the Save button. So just to insert here, if you are working on the CFR and your coworker wants to work on it, you both can't be in the same work in progress at the same time. If you are working on it and then somebody else wants to come along and put the payroll information in and you've gone out to lunch and not closed out the CFR, it will automatically, after 30 minutes of inactivity, boot you out, and then somebody else can get in to work on it. Let's say you come back from lunch, you want to go back into the CFR, you would go in and to continue submission and uploaded CFRs, and you would, it will give you a list of any in progress CFRs. There may be that you're working on the new one and somebody else in the organization is working on amending the previous year's CFR. In that case, you'll have a choice. And when you open it up, you see whatever's in there that are work in progress. That means that they've been created, but they haven't been submitted as yet. You'll choose the one you want to continue working on. We get a lot of calls from people who say, I'm trying to work in the CFR, but it won't let me make changes. Now, there are two reasons for this. One is the role that you were assigned doesn't allow you to work to create a CFR. You may just have a viewer role. More often, it's because when we got to this point, you chose view submission instead of edit. If you choose view and go into the submission that you want to work on, you're not going to be able to make any adjustments to it. It's important that you choose to edit the submission. If you choose to edit the submission, you'll get a warning that says, while you're in editing, no one else is going to be able to get into that in-process submission. I know that for the smaller agencies where there's one person that's the only one that ever works on the CFR, this is unnecessary, but some big organizations have different staff that work on the CFR and enter different information. If you're in continue submission and upload completed CFRs, you have three options here. You can continue the edit, you can stop the edit, which will take you out. Somebody else could then get in and work on it. Occasionally, you may want to delete a submission. You can only delete a submission that hasn't been submitted yet. You can delete from work in progress. Be very careful about that because once you delete, it's gone. So that's rarely going to be an option you're going to want to use. So if you chose to continue the edit, you'll go to the provider agency definition section, and then this is what happens if you chose to end your session and you're going to go out, and then somebody else would have, then you may have to go in, re-enter your code and all that in order to get back in. By hitting stop edit, you're working on something, somebody else comes on and says, hey, I need to enter some payroll data in there. You can hit the stop edit button and go out, and then they'd be able to get in. Again, there's delete submission. And again, you read here, it says this action cannot be undone. You see, in the work in progress section, you may have already gotten your DCN. You went through the validation process. So you see here the second example on this page, it says it has a DCN listed, but not yet submitted. Some people have made the mistake in the past of thinking once they went through validation and got a DCN, they were complete. But you have to actually submit it to us by hitting a submit button. Otherwise, the state agencies can't see what you've done. So if you go in and you want to go in and it's already got DCN assigned, you might be going in to hit the submit button. You see submission right there. That's the step that gets it to where the state agencies can review what you've done. Normally, well, we could go in after you hit the submit button. Normally, overnight, it transfers over to us whatever's been submitted and uploaded the previous day. It works through each of the state agencies' back-end processes. If you've chosen to go in to one that already has a DCN, but wasn't yet submitted, and you say you're going to go in to edit it further, you're going to get this warning that no one else can go into it. And basically, by going in there, the DCN that was assigned will be eliminated, and you'll have to go through the validation process again. Again, here's that submission button that's important after you've got a DCN. You won't be able to submit until a DCN has been assigned. That's one thing some people have come up against, wondering why they couldn't submit. After you hit the submit button, you get this confirmation appear here. In the old days with the desktop, you get an email back saying it was successfully submitted, but now it's you just get a message after you hit it. It appears on your screen after you press that. So if you go to the dashboard, then you can see, if you pull up the period, you'll see what's been submitted for each reporting period. If you look in the latest one here, this calendar 23 for this agency, you can see, and it gives you the DCN for what was submitted. It tells you what state agencies it was for, it was a full, and the date you submitted. If you hit the arrow for one of those previous periods, all the submissions for that period, you may have submitted 2 or 3 times, making adjustments for different state agencies. All those DCNs will appear in order of descending order of when they were submitted. If you're going to upload your signed certifications or your financial statement, you have to go to review or revise CFRs, CBRs, in order to upload documents. You can't upload a financial statement for a period until CFR has been uploaded for that period. And the same with the, and although you only have to upload a financial statement once, with the certifications, you have to have uploaded your CFR, then you choose that one, then you review or revise CFRs, and you and upload documents. That's the option, and that's how you what you would choose. If you've chosen to revise or review CFRs, there are different document types. You can choose to see just the CFRs that you've uploaded. You can choose to see budgets. You can choose to see both listed. So here's an example. For this reporting period, there were 3 different DCNs uploaded. You can see the dates at which they were uploaded. You can see below that the previous periods for which there were CFRs uploaded. You would choose the one that's appropriate for what you want to do. You want to review, revise, or upload documents for a CFR, you choose this. If you choose revise documents, this is what you will do if you get a letter a mean letter from Paul Green telling you you got to change things on your already submitted CFR, you're going to go in and you're going to pull up the one that's there and revise it. I came across somebody recently who thought they needed to create a new one every time they had to make some revisions. And what you do is you go in to review and revise a submitted CFR, and that brings everything forward, and then you can just go in and make the changes you need to the programs that are at issue. You get this warning that if you revise a submitted CFR, the DCN will go away. Now, keep in mind that that previously submitted CFR is there forever. It's always in the records. It's always something that you can go back to look at, whatever. But when you're once you start revising it, you're basically, you got a new work in progress, and the CFRs and the DCN's been eliminated, and you'll go through the validation process to get a new DCN when it's complete. If you're going into work on work in progress and you want to make a revision, but somebody else is already, there's already been one started, a revision, you can't have two identical period and state agency CFRs for the same period. So this is the kind of warning you would get if your coworker had started a revision for the same period for the same state agencies, and then you wanted to go in and make a revision. You can't have two like that in the CFR program at the same time. You can have two with different state agencies for the same period. You can have two work in progress for CFRs for different periods. You just can't have two identical period and state agencies. We get a lot of certification pages uploaded that were printed and signed before the DCN was assigned. So at the bottom of the page, there's no DCN. It says DCN not assigned. Those certifications are invalid, and you're going to end up having to go back in and print the pages again and get them re-signed again. So make sure you hold off printing any of the certs until after you have the final DCN. Also, we get a lot of certifications pages that are signed, but the signer, which is usually the executive director, didn't put a date on there. The signer has to date his signature on each of the pages that he signs. So keep that in mind, because you don't have to keep repeating your work over and over again. The other things that are uploaded are financial statements, only one per reporting period, and your parent agency admin allocation information, if that's applicable to your organization. Once you've chosen you're going to upload, you choose, here they've narrowed the search to the document type CFR only. They go to the reporting period, they pick the DCN that they want to upload certs for. Then they mark what it is they're uploading. Is it a financial statement? Is it at what type, if it is? Is it a certification? Is it a parent agency allocation grid? Keep in mind, you don't have to upload every cert separately. You can create one PDF scan of the I, III, and just check all the boxes and upload them in one fell swoop. The IV is supposed to be uploaded separately, and the financial statements, you're either checking a consolidated, which means the financial statement covers multiple corporations, basically, different federal EINs, You know, it could be the parent agency and its subsidiaries. A standalone means it's just for one CFR agency. It could be the master agency. It could be the parent agency. It's just its information. It could be one of the subsidiaries. A single audit is if you have federally funded programs and you have to produce this as a requirement for the federal government. Parent agency allocation is if you've marked down, if you've got expenses where you're reimbursing the parent agency, then you have to supply us with information on how it was determined, what your share of those parent agency expenses are. If you're uploading, let me go back for just 1 second. If you browse down here, or if you choose down here, you choose browse. If you're uploading any certifications that have been electronically signed, you have to go to this screen and put a check in the box that you're saying that these are e-signed documents and that you're authorized to do this, and you're swearing that everything is on the up and up, and so forth. E-signed documents, you always have to go through this procedure. Also, if you're an agency that sometimes is emailing certifications in, you can't email in any e-signed documents. So in this case, the provider has marked that they're uploading a CFRI, and they'll hit the browse button, and you know, usually it's easy if you just, after you've printed, had signed and dated and scanned the PDFs, just park them on your desktop, and then you can go browse, grab them, and hit the upload button. In this case, you see where they've chosen to upload a financial statement. They say it's a consolidated financial statement, and you have to use the little calendar there to identify the end date of the financial statement period. Once you've done uploads, you can go in. Let's say you want to view the CFR you uploaded. You can pull it up and then hit that uploaded documents line there. And below, you'll see each of the certifications that has been uploaded and each of the financial statement that's been uploaded. You can see the date that those financial statements or that those certifications were uploaded off to the right there. This will be a permanent record. That's one of the reasons why we encourage you, instead of emailing, to always use CFRS Web to get us these supporting documents. They remain in the system. Right now, you can go back to 2012 and pull up CFRs and look at any certifications that were uploaded through the system. If you emailed in a financial statement instead of uploading it, it won't appear here, it won't be saved here. Now, if you think back to when I first started speaking, there were 4 quadrants under the announcement board, creating anew, revising, et cetera, et cetera. The 4th quadrant was helpful links. You can see here, if you click on that, it'll take you straight to the CFR manual. If you want to review some training, you can click that button. It'll take you where you can look at that. And You see, here's an example. This is, if you click that one button, you went and the CFRS webpage at OMH pops up, and you can see different things there that you might want to get information out of. You see there's contact information there. You see the webinar trainings are posted. We ask you to submit questions after we've gone through this, and then we work together to come up with answers for the questions. And you see there at the bottom of the screen, review questions and answers from the CFR training. And they're on there for multiple periods. So if the question didn't come up the most recently, it might be on the previous one, and you can find out information that way. I'm now going to hand this off to the next presenter, who
Thank you, Francis. Good morning, everyone. This is Lisa Vickery from the Office of Addiction Services and Supports, and today I'll be going over the menu and certifications. Now that you're in the CFR, you can use the menu to navigate between schedules. The menu icon can be found in the top left corner of any page in CFRS Web. Once selected, the expanded menu will be visible on the left side of the screen. You must be actively editing a CFR to have full use of the menu options. The menu lists the schedules in the recommended order of completion. However, you may complete the schedules in any order. If you choose to complete schedules out of order, remember that specific data will not be seen until the feeder schedule is completed. Once the feeder schedule is completed, that information is carried forward to another schedule. An example of a feeder schedule is the CFR 4 and 4A. Each screen has a Next Schedule and Previous Schedule button at the bottom of the page. By default, the Next Schedule button follows the recommended order of completion. The gold line indicates where you are in the menu. Currently, the gold line is on the Provider Agency Definition screen. To complete the Provider Agency Definition screen, you'll need the following information regarding your agency: your 5-digit agency code, the legal name of your organization, the street address and county of your administrative headquarters, the ownership type, which will be not-for-profit, proprietary, or governmental, your federal ID number, and your agency's audited financial statement reporting period. If you imported data from a prior period CFR, the information will be transferred. The start and end date of your financial statements does not transfer and will always need to be completed. Imported data should always be reviewed for accuracy. If you did not have a prior period CFR to import data from, the bolded lines indicate required information and must be manually completed. To complete the program and site definition screen, you will need the following information regarding your agency's programs and sites: the types of programs your agency operates, the New York State agencies that certify or fund the programs, and for each program being operated, you will need the 4-digit program code and 2-digit index code, the site code or PRU number for OASIS, and the physical address and county. If you imported data from a prior period CFR, the information will be transferred as long as the program code is still valid for the current reporting period. The program and site can also be entered manually. On this screen, you can add a program by clicking on the button at the top right, edit a program by clicking the pencil icon, or delete a program by clicking on the trash can. The certification schedules are the CFRI, CFR-IIIA, Compliance Review, CFR-III, and CFR-IV. Based on your agency's CFR submission type, the certification schedules that require data input will be listed in the menu. The preferred method for submitting the signed certification schedules is CFRS Web, which will be discussed in detail later in the presentation. The CFRI is used to report agency identifying data and serves as a certification statement by the agency's CEO, attesting to the validity of the information contained in the document and is required for all CFR submissions. Information in the gray area is non-enterable and has been carried forward from the provider definition screen. All bolded fields must be completed. Use the checkboxes provided to indicate if contact information has changed from the prior period submission. This would include changes to the following: agency address, contact person, who is also referred to as the fiscal contact and should be the person able to answer questions regarding the CFR, the Chief Executive Officer, who is also responsible for signing the CFRI, the President, Chair, Board of Directors, and the claims contact. If your agency receives state aid from OASIS, OMH, or OPWDD, this should be the person who can answer questions regarding the claim. Up-to-date CEO and fiscal contact emails are essential to receive communication from the New York State agencies. If the contact person and claims contact are the same, click Copy Contact. The information will automatically be filled in. Once completed, select Next Schedule to proceed. In summary, the CFRI is required for all CFR submissions and must be signed and dated by your Executive Director, CEO, and may not be accepted if signed or dated by anyone else. It requires contact information for the agency's fiscal contact and executive director. The contact information for the president, chair, board of directors is required for not-for-profit corporations. It's optional for proprietary service providers and is not required for governmental entities. The CFRI should be uploaded in CFRS Web, and the signed and dated schedule must have the same DCN as the submitted CFR. The CFR-IIIA schedules are the accountant's report for not-for-profit and proprietary service providers. Imported data should be reviewed for accuracy, and all applicable fields should be completed. Additional lines were added regarding the CPA peer review and CPA registration with the State Education Department and will be discussed in detail later in the presentation. The CFR-IIIA is required for most full CFR submissions. It should be signed and dated by an independent certified public accountant, sole practitioner, partner of the CPA firm, or the CPA firm that audited and certified the CFR and should adhere to audit examination guidelines in Appendix AA of the CFR manual. The CFR-IIIA should be uploaded in CFRS Web and have the same DCN as the CFR submitted. Please keep in mind that the CFR-II and IIA prints on multiple pages, and all pages must be uploaded to meet the filing requirements. A CFR-II or IIA will be printed based on the audited financial statement reporting period that was entered in the provider agency definition screen. The CFR-II will print when the financial statements and the CFR reporting period are the same. The CFR-IIA will print when the financial statements and the CFR reporting period are different. Counties and other governmental entities have two options for CPA certification of full CFR submission types: CFR II or a compliance review. The CFR II option in CFRS Web has been removed for governmental entities. Governmental entities that are required to submit a CFR may use the compliance review in lieu of the accountant's certification on Schedule CFR II. The compliance review is intended to ensure that a CFR has been subjected to certain agreed upon procedures specified by OPWDD, OMH, OASIS, and DOH. The compliance review must include the DCN of the CFR submission that was reviewed. The compliance review schedule has been added to CFRS Web for governmental entities. It includes the same language as the Independent Accountant's Report on applying agreed upon procedures from Appendix CC. An enterable line has been added to the compliance review schedule regarding the sentence that states, "The following information and findings came to our attention from performing the procedures described in this report. Itemize all information and findings. If none, so state." There have been additional lines added to the compliance review schedule regarding the CPA peer review and CPA registration with the State Education Department and will be discussed in detail later in the presentation. The CFR III must be completed if aid to localities funding or state aid is received through a local county contract or a direct contract with one or more of the following state agencies: OASIS, OMH, and OPWDD. It is not required for providers that operate only rate-based and/or unfunded programs. Required signatures are as follows. If your agency is funded through a direct contract, the executive director must sign and date the left side of the certification statement designated for voluntary local service provider. If your agency is funded through a local county contract, the left side of the certification must be signed and dated by your executive director, and the right side must be signed and dated by the county director of community mental health services. Counties must have the middle section of the certification signed and dated by the county treasurer and the right side signed and dated by the director of community mental health services. In summary, the CFR III should be uploaded in CFRS Web and have the same DCN as the submitted CFR. We ask that you submit a signed and dated copy of the CFR III to the funding New York State agencies at the same time it is sent to the county. The CFR IV is a series of yes, no, or non-applicable questions regarding the fiscal status of the agency. Question 4 was divided into 4A and 4B. The newly added question refers to submitted single audits and will be discussed later in the presentation. The CFR IV is required as part of the full, abbreviated, and Article 28 abbreviated CFR submissions of not-for-profit and proprietary providers submitting to OASIS, OMH, and OPWDD. The CFR IV schedule is used to report agency identifying data and serves as a certification statement by the service provider's chief executive officer, attesting to the validity of the information contained in the document under the penalties prescribed in accordance with Article 175 of New York State Penal Law or false written statements. It is not required for SED-only CFR filers, governmental service providers, or many abbreviated CFRs. Certifications that are signed but not dated may need to be resubmitted to satisfy the filing requirements. This is the end of my section. Let's take a 5-minute break before the next presenter starts.
Okay, welcome back. My name is Sean Griffin, and I am with the New York State Office of Mental Health. Next, we'll be discussing Schedule CFR 4, 4A, and Schedule CFR 1. The CFR 4 schedule is used to report the hours worked, amount paid, and the full-time equivalents associated with each position title employed by the service provider. CFR 4 is a 2-tab data entry screen which captures program site and agency administration specific data. A separate CFR 4 schedule is completed for each state agency and/or shared program. When completing the Program Site tab, the state agency, program code, and site code must be selected from the drop-down box. If data was transferred from a prior period, some rows may already be pre-populated. If you wish to create a new row, select Add a Line. Next, select the desired position title code from the drop-down box. Select the position title code detailed in Appendix R, which best reflects the job responsibilities being performed by the employee. Then, enter the standard workweek, aggregate total hours paid, and amount paid for all individuals. This step will be repeated for each employee and position title code. CFRS Web will automatically calculate FTEs to 3 decimal places. If an entire row needs to be deleted, click the trash icon in the desired row. CFR 4 was updated to include an informational-only section, which was implemented for the calendar year 2022 reporting period and forward. If applicable, the completion of the informational-only section is required. Please note, the total hours paid and total amount paid should include the amount of overtime reported. This slide is an excerpt from the CFR manual, which further details the informational-only section of CFR 4 previously discussed. It provides an explanation for each column of the section. Overtime hours included in total hours paid, overtime amount included in total amount paid, average hourly rate, and annualized salary. Located on the far right of the webpage, CFR 4 Personal Services, the grayed out section is a total for the program site reporting. The title for the section is State Agency Total for all programs. The following columns are grayed out and automatically populated: total hours paid, full-time equivalent, and total amount paid. CFR 4 Personal Services Agency Administration tab. Similar to the Program Site tab, select a position title code from the drop-down and complete the following columns: standard workweek, hours paid, and amount paid. FTEs are calculated automatically. Only Series 600 position title codes are available for use. Please note, only one agency administration CFR 4 schedule is completed. It is not required for each state agency. CFR 4 is included in all CFR submission types. CFR 4 captures only personal services related to employees of your agency. This includes individuals who received a W-2, staff providing program services, and all agency administration staff, regardless of the size of the New York State agency programs in relation to the total agency. 100% of the amounts paid for agency administration staff must be reported. Individuals receiving a 1099 tax form are considered independent contractors. Position titles are listed in Appendix R of the CFR manual. The positions are functional titles and may not match the titles used by your agency. Position title codes may be specific to New York State agency or program types. Here we can see an example for position title code 211 will not be an option for any other agency outside of OASIS. The volunteer coordinator is a position title code specific to that agency. The slide shows the different level categories from Appendix R of the manual. Level 200 is direct care staff, level 300 is clinical staff, level 600 is agency administration staff. Please note, direct care and clinical staff hours are a key component of the rate rationalization process for OPWDD. Please be sure to give your staff the appropriate codes. Appendix R provides position titles, position title codes, and a detailed definition. The standard work week must be at least 35 hours, but not exceed 45 hours per week. The hours paid, FTEs, and the amount paid totals are shown by column. Where applicable, employees' hours and salaries paid should be allocated between programs and position or titles. This slide shows a calculation for an FTE. FTEs are calculated by dividing hours paid by the standard work week times 52 weeks. The example shown is a calculation of the FTE and represents the most complicated calculation. A less than full-time employee who worked for less than a full year. However, CFRS Web will do all the calculations for you. CFR 4, Personal Services Continued. The totals of CFR 4 input carry forward to the following schedules. CFR 1, line 16 for full CFRs. CFR 3, line 1 for full CFRs. DMH 1, line 6 for abbreviated and Article 28 abbreviated CFRs. CFR 4A, Contracted Direct Care and Clinical Personal Services. This schedule is used to report the amount paid to individuals, organizations that have contracted with the service provider, direct care, and/or clinical personal services. All other contracted services must be reported on the appropriate expense line on Schedule CFR 1 or CFR 3. Like CFR 4, select the state agency, program code, and site code from the drop-down menus. Then select the position code from the drop-down and enter the hours worked and the amount paid. Standard work week is not required for the CFR 4A. Only contracted direct care and clinical staff positions are reported on this schedule. Please keep in mind 200 level codes, direct care hours, and 300 level codes, clinical hours, are an important part of OPWDD's rate rationalization formula. Please be sure to report an accurate total for contracted hours. If contracted staff are not paid by the hour, an estimate of hours must be made. Entries of 1 or 0 will not be generally accepted. Questions regarding whether an individual is a contract or an employee should be directed to the IRS, the service provider's accountant, and/or a tax attorney. CFR 1, Program Site Data General Information. The schedule is used to report program administration and program site expenses and revenues for the reporting period on a program site specific basis. Program site expenses are costs directly associated with the provision of services. CFR 1 is a 3-tab data entry screen, general information, expenses, and revenues. To enter program site data, select a state agency, program code, and site code from the dropdown. Please note, gray fields are non-enterable. This data is automatically populated from a different schedule or screen. CFR 1 is only included in full CFR submissions. It is a state agency-specific program site shared program-specific schedule. Data on lines 1 through 6 and 8 are carried forward from the program site definition screen. For Medicaid-eligible programs, report both the Medicaid provider agreement number and the national provider ID number on the appropriate lines. The numbers should be associated with the program site being reported. It is critical that units of service delivered during the reporting period are captured, counted, and reported correctly. Inaccurate units of service reported is cause for rejection of submitted CFRs. OASIS programs. Units of service should be similar to those reported by the entity to the OASIS client data system through the monthly service delivery function, except when reporting guidance varies. For OMH programs, OMH units of service carry forward from the OMH1. The OMH1 will be discussed later in the presentation. The units of service reported are accrued based on date of service, not date of payment. All units of service must be reported, including those for which no payment was received. Please use the following appendix E, F, G, H, and double H for more information and appropriate measurement of units. Section 13 of the CFR manual and Schedule CFR 1 made the following updates to line 13. Line 13, total units of service, is calculated by totaling the following lines. Line 13A, Medicaid fee-for-service, 13B, Medicaid managed care, and line 13C, all other units of service. Refer to the CFR manual for additional guidance. CFR 1 Program Site Data Expenses. Here's a screenshot of a few of the reportable expenses on CFR 1. There are more expense lines than can be displayed in one screenshot. Use the scroll bar on the right side of the screen to access the lines not displayed when reviewing a CFR and CFRS web. Please keep in mind, expenses and revenues are reported on the accrual basis of accounting. CFR 1 Program Site Data Expense Categories. Expenses can be broken out into the following categories: personal services, vacation leave accruals, fringe benefits, OTPS, equipment, property, and agency administration. The next few slides detail some of the line titles and descriptions for the expense categories just listed. Section 13 of the CFR manual provides a more in-depth explanation of line details. Here we have line 16 for personal services, line 17 for vacation leave accruals, line 19 is non-mandated fringe benefits. Again, here are more line descriptions. I'd like to point out line 28, expensed equipment, is the cost of all program site and/or program administration non-adaptive equipment purchased during the cost report period with a value of less than $5,000 or a useful life of less than 2 years. Refer to Appendix O of the CFR manual for more information regarding how equipment should be reported on the CFR. Here again, we have identified some lines with the corresponding detail. We have line 35, which is contracted direct care and clinical personal services. Line 36 is supplies and materials, non-household. This includes cost for program supplies, medical supplies, printing, copying, postage, and computer software. Line 39 is insurance general. The insurance cost for general liability, bonding, professional and medical malpractice, vehicle or other insurance costs related to program site and program administration. Do not report insurance expenses related to equipment or property on this line. CFR 1 expenses other lines. The OTPS equipment and property categories each have an other line for miscellaneous items. This information is entered through a line detail box. Detail is required for individual items costing $1,000 or more. Individual items costing less than $1,000 each may be grouped as all items less than $1,000 each. Here we have an example of a line detail box from CFRS Web. Data input lines with a line detail box icon can only be entered by clicking on the following link. Line detail boxes are customized to meet specific New York State agency needs with predefined item descriptions. These are shown by the grayed out lines here. Additional item descriptions can be added by clicking Add a Line and typing in the new description and expense value. Please be sure to be specific in your labeled description. It is important to report expenses on the appropriate predefined lines if applicable. Below is an example of expenses reported on CFR 1, line 40, OTPS, other, that should have been reported differently. Printing expenses totaling $1,227 is more appropriately reported on CFR 1, line 36, supplies and materials, non-household. Rubbish removal totaling $3,999 should be reallocated to CFR 1, line 22, repairs and maintenance. A revised CFR could be required for incorrectly classifying expenses. Bad debt expense. Bad debt should be reported on the appropriate schedules as follows. CFR 1, line 40, and adjusted out as not allowable on CFR 1, line 66. CFR 2, column 9, line 4, and adjusted out as not allowable on CFR 2, column 9, line 8. CFR 3, line 17, and adjusted out as not allowable on CFR 3, line 41. Refer to the FAQ from the CFR manual for further guidance. The takeaway here is bad debt is a two-line entry, one on the appropriate expense line and one on the corresponding non-allowable line. Certain assets are depreciated. Line 44 is the depreciation of vehicle. Line 45 is the depreciation of equipment. Line 51, depreciation for building. Line 52, depreciation for building land improvements. All items with an individual cost of $5,000 or more and a useful life of 2 or more years must be depreciated. See Appendix O of the CFR Manual for guidance on capitalization and depreciation. For example, group purchases of like items should be treated as a single purchase. Group purchases of unlike items should be treated as if each item was purchased individually. Telephone systems and computer systems should be treated as a group purchase. Adjustments, non-allowable cost. Line 66. Enter the description, line number, and amount of all non-allowable expenses reported in any line of the CFR1 in the line detail box. Negative numbers cannot be entered in the line detail box. Please refer to Appendix X for some, but not all, non-allowable costs. And similar to bad debt, non-allowable costs should be a two-line entry on the CFR. Here we have an example of reporting non-allowable cost. Note, the line number refers to where the individual expense is originally reported and is being adjusted out as non-allowable on CFR1, line 66. CFR1 expenses, OPWDD only. The following lines will be discussed during the OPWDD agency-specific section. However, it is important to note, lines 69F to I relate to phases 1 and 2 of the workforce stabilization. Now we'll talk about CFR1 revenues. This is a screenshot showing the beginning of the revenue section from CFRS Web. Remember, expenses and revenues are reported on the accrual basis of accounting. Next, we'll talk about some line numbers and details. Line 69 is participant fees. This reports revenues received from program participants in excess of SSI and SSA self-pay. Medicaid revenue is separated into Medicaid fee-for-service, line 72A, and Medicaid managed care, line 72B. Here we can see the description from the manual providing a breakdown on the reporting. Line 74, other third parties. The revenue from private health insurance coverage, which includes but is not limited to Blue Cross, HMOs, and other insurance carriers. Federal grants, line 79. Report grant revenues received directly from an administering federal government agency in support of the service providers programs. CFR Web includes the following predefined lines. We can see some for the U.S. Department of Education, U.S. Department of Justice, U.S. Department of Labor. It's important to note to not include federal grant revenue received from OASIS, OMH, OPWDD, and DOH as aid to localities funding. CFR Web has been modified to include the following predefined entries. We have Paycheck Protection Program, Economic Injury Disaster Loan, Emergency Advance, and FEMA. Additional lines are available by using the Add a Line button in CFRS Web if a predefined line does not exist. State grants, line 80. Report grant revenues received from New York State agencies other than the CFR reporting agencies. CFRS Web includes the following predefined entries: New York State Department of Health, New York State Department of Labor, New York State Department of Transportation, and New York State OCFS, to name a few. Note, this does not include monies received from OASIS, OMH, OPWDD, and/or SED, and does not include A2 localities funding received from the same agencies. Instead, these monies should be reported as net deficit funding. CFR 1, revenues continued. Line 82 is for Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, also known as SNAP. Report food-related revenues. This is only applicable to OASIS and OPWD programs. Line 83 is gifts, legacies, bequests, and donations. Here you report the monetary contribution revenue derived from gifts, legacies, bequests, and donations. Note, non-monetary donations, contributions are reported as reconciling items on the reconciliation if schedule is required. Please see the FAQ section of the CFR manual for additional details. Line 86 is for prior period rate adjustments. Report the revenue from a rate appeal, rate adjustment, or retroactive contingency contract. Do not include net deficit funding amounts on this line. Please review the specific information from specific state agencies regarding reporting requirements. Lines 93 and 103 are for net deficit funding. Funds received by the LGU from a DMH state agency and passed on to the service provider. They're either funds received directly from a DMH state agency via direct contract or funds received directly from the funding LGU. Line 94 is for other revenue. Some examples include OASIS, closely allied entity revenue or opioid settlement funds, OMH, safety net payments, vital access providers, Medicaid revenue, OPWDD, assistive supports revenue, revenue for non-Medicaid eligible individuals under predefined OPWDD state paid. Please keep in mind this line allows for both predefined entries and the addition of a line if necessary. The revenues, GAAP adjustments to revenues, and non-GAAP adjustments to revenues categories each have an other line for miscellaneous items. Information is entered through a line detail box. Detail is required for individual items of $1,000 or more, and individual items less than $1,000 each may be grouped together as all items $1,000 each. That concludes this portion of the presentation, and I will now pass it to the next presenter.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kate, and I work at the New York State Education Department in the Rate Setting Unit, and I will be presenting today on CFR 2, CFR 2A, and CFR 3. Here's a sample of the CFR 2 agency fiscal summary that is on the CFR. The CFR 2 captures the expenses and revenues for the entire agency. Totals for each New York State agency are displayed in separate columns. Agencies' activities, not inclusive of state programs, are to be reported in column 9 of their programs. Only column 9 is enterable. And I'll show you the sample again. So only column 9 is enterable. Data for columns 2 through 8 carries forward from DMH1. Column 1 is calculated by CFRS Web, sum of columns 2 through 9. And column 1, lines 7, 9, and 10 should match the respective categories in your financial statements. If there is a discrepancy between the CFR 2 and your financial statements, it should be explained through the input on the reconciliation. And the full and abbreviated CFR 2 is required for full and abbreviated CFRs. CFR 2 is not required for Article 28 abbreviated or mini abbreviated CFRs. This is an agency-wide schedule. Also reported in column 9 on the CFR 2 are the expenses and revenues relating to fundraising and special events, realized and unrealized gains and losses, management services expenses provided to another provider agency on an ongoing basis. Please note, fundraising and fundraising special events are not considered agency administrative expenses and cannot be reported on CFR 3. The provider agency totals reported in column 1 will be compared to your financial statement totals. If the reporting periods are the same, any discrepancies will be explained in the reconciliation. Operating expenses reported on CFR 2 are used to distribute agency administrative expenses between the CFR reporting programs. Operating expenses include personal services, vacation leave, accruals, fringe benefits, and other than personal services, less raw materials. The reconciliation schedule is not required if the CFR reporting period and the financial statement period are different. Governmental entities, Article 28 abbreviated and many abbreviated CFR filers are not required to complete the reconciliation. If a reconciliation schedule is required, it must be completed in order to pass validation. For required reconciliation, the amount calculated as a difference in the worksheet should be less than $100 in order to pass validations. From CFRS Web, you can see the reconciliation page. So you would report the sum of total expenses and total losses as reported in the financial statements. Using the additions and subtractions drop-down detail boxes, report the expenses and losses included in the CFR 2 that were not included in the financial statements. Common reconciling items may be reported as addition, subtractions in the reconciliation schedule, such as elimination of intercompany expenses and revenues, depreciation differences. Differing allowable depreciation methods have been reported in the CFR and statement of activities expense in the financial statements. Other, report any other item differences between the financial statements and the CFR that are not reported as adjustments, non-allowable costs on CFR 1 or CFR 3. A description should be added with any items reported here. Rounding. Any remaining difference between expenses reported on the financial statements and the CFR should be reported on this line. The CFR 2A schedule must be completed by all not-for-profit and proprietary providers when financial statements are required to be submitted. It is not required for Article 28 abbreviated filers, mini abbreviated filers, and governmental entities. The schedule is used to report data from your financial statements that were submitted in accordance with sections 2.0 and 6.0, and also data from the underlying year-end adjusted accounting records that support these financial statements. The purpose of the schedule is to collect data in a uniform way in order for the state agency to have it readily available for provider-specific fiscal analysis as well as an industry-wide statistics. Instructions for completing Schedule CFR 2A can be found in Section 14.0 of the CFR manual. This is a sample of the CFR 2A. And here you can see some lines. CFR 2A Section 28 has been renamed to operating transactions. CFR 2A line 28A has been used to report operating revenues and operating gains. And CFR 2A line 28B is used to report operating expenses and operating losses. COVID-19, it's a new line for the 2023 calendar manuals and forward. Report the total amount of revenue and gains on the extinguishment of debt recorded in the CFR reporting period that was attributed to COVID-19 funding, grants, loan forgiveness, contributions, donations, awards, and/or tax credits. Include in total revenue and gains the COVID-19 grants awarded from federal and/or state agencies, counties, and the private foundations. The amount of the Paycheck Protection Program loan that was forgiven and recorded as a revenue or as a gain on the extinguishment of debt, the COVID-19 federal tax credits that were recorded as revenue, donations received as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. And you will report the total revenue and gains on an accrual basis of accounting. CFR 3 Agency Administration. Agency administration consists of the costs associated with the overall direction of the agency, general record keeping and financial management, governing board activities, public relations, excluding those costs associated with the fundraising and special events. Direct identification of specific expenses is a preferred method for charging expenses to various functions. Further, indirect costs are those activities or services that benefit more than one project or activity that may require to be allocated. In this case, the allocation method must be reasonable, consistent, and reviewed by management. Some examples include time studies, square footage, actual use, and percentage of direct cost. Note, proper documentation should be retained regarding the methods used. Providers should consult the CFR manual, appendices I and K. Full CFR filers report the agency administration costs for the entire provider agency on a single CFR3 schedule. Abbreviated CFR filers complete the agency administration worksheet in lieu of a CFR3. Here's a sample from CFRS Web. CFR3 is a 3-tab data entry screen. You can see personal services, fringe benefits, and other than personal services, equipment and property, and ratio value. Remember, fundraising and fundraising special event costs are not to be reported on CFR3. They are to be reported in full on CFR2, column 9. If a parent agency administration allocation is reported on line 38, documentation of the administrative allocation must be sent with the certification schedules. This must include total parent agency cost, total allocated cost to each of the subordinate agencies, and the basis used for the allocation. Section 15.0 of the CFR manual was revised to provide additional guidance on reporting parent agency administration allocation on CFR 3, line 38. Line 6 of the CFR 3 is for audit, legal, accounting. This includes the cost of other accounting services such as payroll services and CFR audit costs. Line 14, contracted personal services such as management, consulting services, IT support, and more. Items with a cost in excess of $5,000 must be listed in the line detail box separately by description and amount. Items costing less than $5,000 each may be aggregated and listed as all items less than $5,000. Line 16, insurance general. Insurance costs for general liability, bonding, crime and fidelity, professional malpractice, vehicle or other insurance costs related to agency administration. Do not report insurance expenses related to equipment or property on this line. Here's another sample from the CFRS Web. The other than personal service, equipment, and property categories each have an other line for miscellaneous items. Information is entered through a line detail box. Detail is required for individual items costing $1,000 or more. Individual items costing less than $1,000 each may be grouped together as all items less than $1,000 each. Note, if the total of the grouped items is excessive, you may be asked for detailed breakdown. Line 41 of the CFR3 is for adjustments not allowable cost. Enter the description, line number, and the amount of all non-allowable expenses reported in any line of the CFR3 in the line detail box. Refer to Appendix X for some but not all non-allowable costs. Report the amount in excess of actual cost of or fair market value for all administrative related party transactions disclosed on CFR 5. The amounts entered must be greater than or equal to 0. Line 42 is the net agency administration is the amount to be allocated using the ratio value method. Here's another sample from CFRS Web. All data elements are populated by CFRS Web. All calculations are performed by CFRS Web. Calculated values are carried forward to CFR1, CFR2, and DMH1. So CFR3, the ratio value allocation. The total corporate agency administrative expenses are allocated to all agency funding sources using the ratio value method. The ratio value method uses operating costs of the program sites as the basis of the allocation. Operating costs are defined as personal services, vacation leave accruals, fringe benefits, and other than personal services, less raw materials. Schedule CFR3 uses a two-step process to allocate agency administrative cost, but CFRS Web completes all the calculations for you. The ratio value allocation continued. Step 1, total corporate agency administrative expenses from CFR3, line 42, are allocated to each funding New York State agency. Operating costs for program codes 0880 and 0890 are excluded from the ratio value calculation. The calculation steps. Total agency operating costs are carried forward from CFR2, columns 2 through 9, to CFR3, lines 43 through 50, and are total in line 51. Line 51 is carried forward to line 53. Net agency administration is carried forward from CFR3, line 42, to CFR3, line 52. Line 52 is divided by line 53 to develop the 6-digit ratio value factor on line 54. The ratio value factor is applied to the operating costs on CFR3, lines 43 through 50, to calculate each funding source share of agency administrative costs, and the allocation is displayed on lines 55 through 62. Step 2. A second ratio value allocation is performed at state agency level, exempting additional New York State agency-specific programs. A list of the program codes not included in the Step 2 calculation can be found in Section 15.0 of the CFR manual. But this Step 2 calculation, the second step of the ratio value allocation, is done within the New York State agency shares assigned in Step 1, allowing additional specified program types to be exempted. The second step exempted programs are OPWDD program code 0190 and OMH program codes 0860, 0870, 1230, 1690, 2740, 2850, 2860, 2980, 6920, 8810, and programs with a program code index startup. The adjusted ratio value factors are displayed on lines 71 through 77. Please note that these are all listed in your handout that you were given. This particular piece is not included in your sample that you received. It is the agency admin worksheet for abbreviated filers. The agency administration must be calculated using the ratio value method. You would enter total agency administration expenses on line 8, and CFRS Web does the rest. Agency administration final thoughts. All agencies have agency administrative expenses. Agency administration expenses need to be distributed to all activities fairly. Ratio value is the required method used to allocate agency administration expenses on the core reports. Ratio value is based on operating cost. In calculating expected administrative and overhead expenses, hospitals should use the most recent available allocation percentages from the step-down derived from the latest institutional cost report, ICR, for the period submitted to the Department of Health, Office of Health Insurance Programs, as per Appendix Y. For more information on the CFR3 schedule, please see Section 15.0 of the CFR manual. For more information on agency administration in general, please see Appendix I, Section 42 of the CFR manual, and please refer to Appendix T, Section 53 for more information on how to calculate the agency administration on an abbreviated CFR. I will now pass to the next presenter.
Hi, my name is Emily Seward from OPWDD, and I will begin today with CFR 5. CFR 5 is required for all submission types, but Article 28 abbreviated. This schedule is used to report any activity that may be considered a conflict of interest, such as, but not limited to, transactions between family members, a key person of the provider or their relative has financial interest in the organization, if an individual has financial interest in both the service provider and the related organization, if another entity has financial interest in the organization, or if the service provider has financial interest in another entity. It should be noted for OASIS and OPWDD providers that the term related organizations and or individuals is outlined in Article 25.06 of Mental Hygiene Law. OASIS providers should also refer to the administrative and fiscal guidelines for OASIS providers. Further detail regarding accounting standards can be found in Section 18 of the manual. CFR 5 begins with 2 yes or no questions that must be answered. If the answer to both is no, you are done with this schedule and you can move on to CFR 6. If yes is selected for question number 1, you must fill out Section B for OASIS, OMH, SED, OPWDD, and DOH providers, or else an error message will pop up. The same applies to question number 2. If this is answered yes for OASIS, OMH, SED, OPWDD, and DOH providers, then Section D must be filled out. Again, if not, there will be another error message reminding you. Again, if question 1 was answered yes, then Section B is where the details of the transaction are reported. You must select Add a line at the bottom of the page to begin entering the details. In column 2, the trans ID will automatically be generated by CFRS Web. In column 3, you must select 3 programs or sites that are affected from the drop-down box. In column 4, you type in the description of the transaction, for example, a property lease rental. Column 5, which is pretty straightforward, the name of the related organization or individual. Column 6 is where the relationship to the provider is selected from the drop-down box. More detailed descriptions of the options can be found in Manual Section 18 in the relationship key. Column 7 is also straightforward, the amount of said transaction. Column 8 is the total allowable cost of the transaction, which is the lower of the related organization or individual's actual cost of the fair market value of providing the service or the supply. Column 9 is calculated by subtracting column 8 from column 7, and this cannot be entered directly. Lease or rental agreements reported in Section B must be detailed in Section C. These expenses detailed in Section C should be the related organization or individual's actual costs in operating the building used by the service provider and not the rental payments made to the related organization or individual. If a space lease or rental transaction relates to more than 3 programs, sites, and administration, more details should be provided for the top 3 most affected programs or sites listed in column 3 of Section B. Again, to begin filling out this section, you must click Add a Line. In column 2, select the corresponding trans ID from Section B. In column 3, select the program and sites affected. Columns 4, depreciation, 5, mortgage interest, 6, insurance, and 7, property taxes must all be filled out. Any other expenses should be completed in column 8, Other. Any items entered in this column more than $1,000 must be listed in the worksheet separated by description and amount. Any items less than $1,000 may be aggregated and listed as all items less than $1,000 each, with the combined total amount. Column 9 will automatically take the sum of columns 4 through 8 for each item. Before moving on to the next section, make sure that any adjustments to allowable costs from column 9 are also reported on CFR 1, line 66, CFR 3, line 41, and DMH 1, line 13. Here is a screenshot of where the adjustment to the allowable cost from CFR 5 must also be reported on CFR 1, line 66, in the description adjustment to lease. Section D must be filled out by OASIS, OMH, OPW, DD, and DOH providers. If question 2 was answered yes, which was that the provider received any financial assistance or if the provider provided financial aid. Column 2, the trans ID will be automatically generated. Column 3 lists the name of the party or individual. Columns 4 through 5, the address. Column 6, enter the kind of financial aid. In column 7, you must select either the funding to or funding from box. And then column 8 is the amount of said financial aid. CFR 6 is used to report the salaries given to a provider's board members, employees under the title codes 601, 602, and 603, which are executive director or CEOs, assistant executive directors, and CFOs, respectively. Also included are any employees that earn more than $150,000 a year, whether that is through salary or contract. And then the top 5 highest paid contractors that receive more than $50,000 per year would also be included here. Also, newly added this year, any employees operating under a contract with a separate entity that would normally fall under Title Code 601, 602, and 603 should be reported on CFR 6. CFR 6 is required for all submissions except for Article 28 abbreviated and mini abbreviated CFRs. If any employees serve on the governing authority, then select yes to the question in Section 1. Please note that this question does not include a non-voting member on the board, like a president, CEO, If yes for this section is selected, it will prompt the user to input the employee name and their title code. You must hit add a line to complete. Section 2 is where all compensated board members will be listed individually. If an employee is also on the board, only report their compensation as a board member. It is also important to note that the compensation does not include stipends or dinner meetings. All right, and here's a screenshot of Section 2. The amount paid is self-explanatory along with the contracted payment amount. Any employee benefits like health insurance or retirement that is accessible by all employees must be reported in the fringe benefits column. Any other benefits that may be given out in place of money like awards or loans are reported as other benefits. To report on this line, you must hit add a line and fill in a description of the benefit and its cash value. Total compensation will total all other filled out columns automatically. You do not need to input this manually. All 601, 602, and 603 positions are reported in Section 3, along with all employees that have a yearly salary that exceeds $150,000 a year. That includes salary and contracted payments. You must click Add a Line to begin reporting. Concerning the annualized salary, it is important to note that the result of the amount paid for the performance and completion of regular services, managerial, administrative, professional, direct care, support, or other services, divided by the FTE. If the FTE is greater than 1, the amount paid divided by 1 is calculated. Here is an example showing CFR 6, column 9, if the other benefit is a non-allowable cost. Mary Reynolds, the CEO, has received money for car expenses that was not given to all employees, thus making it a non-allowable cost. This means that this expense will also have to be reported on CFR 3, line 41. Here is a screenshot of where the non-allowable cost of Mary's car expense needs to be listed on CFR 3, line 41. If this was missed, you would have to go back and adjust, and a description and value must be assigned here. The top 5 highest paid contractors are to be reported in Section 4. These can be individuals or entities, and the compensation must be over $50,000 to be reported here. To add to this section, click Add a Line, then list the names of the contractors and select the type of contractor in the dropdown and report the total amount paid during the reporting period. All CFR types, but the mini abbreviated, must fill out the DMH-1 schedule. Also exempt are providers for SED and DOH only programs. The data in the DMH-1 is taken directly from the inputted data from CFR-1. If you need to change any of the data on this schedule, it will need to be changed on a prior schedule. However, for those submitting abbreviated and Article 28 abbreviated CFRs, the data will not be calculated and you will need to manually input. Lines are reported here either by program type or program site. The index code and program type together will designate whether a site is aggregated or not. Generally, if one column is required, enter 00 for every occurrence. If there are multiple columns allowed, enter 01 for the first occurrence, then 02 for the second, and so on. Requirements for filling out DMH-1 include using the full accrual basis of accounting. If you are listing any equipment that is worth equal to or more than $5,000 and has a useful life of 2 years or more, it must be depreciated on this schedule. For full and abbreviated CFR types, agency administration will be separated by New York State agencies in their programs using the ratio value allocation methodology. Here is a screenshot of the DMH-1 in CFRS Web. The 3 tabs or sections of the DMH-1 are at the top of the page: program units of service and expenses, program revenues, and program adjustments to revenues. Again, for full CFRs, the data will be grayed out here since the data is transferred from CFR1. Only abbreviated and Article 28 abbreviated submission types directly enter data on the DMH-1. If additional items over $1,000 need to be reported on lines 30, 34, and 40, they require more detail. Remember, if you are filling out a full CFR, you must go back to CFR1 to enter this data, then it will transfer to DMH1. For example, go to line 94 on CFR1 and you will click on Add a Line at the bottom to import a more detailed description and amount. Federal and state grants can be adjusted on line 78 and 79 on CFR1 as needed. There are specific lines to reflect EIDL and FEMA grants. If another line is needed, then you can simply use the Add a Line option at the bottom. Here is another screenshot of DMH1. Lines 1 through 2 are the program type and code. Lines 3 through 5 are the units of service. Lines 6 through 14 are expenses. Lines 15 through 31 are revenues. The lines above will be grayed out if you are filling out a full CFR. Another screenshot to show the other lines. Lines 32 through 36 are GAAP adjustments to revenue, and lines 37 through 44 are the non-GAAP adjustments to revenue. And there should be, I don't see it, but there should be at the bottom of this schedule a yellow DMH1 to DMH2 transfer button. And we highly encourage you to use this button to begin the claims section. If needed, the information can be entered manually in DMH2. And that includes the section for DMH1, and I will be turning it over to the next speaker.
Thanks, Emily. This is host Alpa Amin. Help functions. When in the doubt, use the help function. We believe this is a useful tool. Within the menu function at the bottom, you can find the help icon. A PDF file with the help contents will open in separate browser tab. You can also click on the help icon next to the schedule name. A PDF file specific to the schedule will open in the CFRS browser tab. Thank you once again for participating in the CFR training webinar for the 2023-24 fiscal year consolidated fiscal report. In case you missed the beginning of the webinar, please take the time to fill out the post survey after you leave the event. It will help us make this training better. This webinar has been recorded and will be posted online shortly. An email will be sent out to notifying you of the location. The Q&A will be carefully reviewed and answer will be posted online as soon as possible. This concludes CFR training session 1. Thank you.